Now hold on just 1 minute there, YouTube. I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking something along the line of, Cunches, why are you using a frenzy spear? That's dirty, that's filthy, why would you do that? And don't you worry, anything you could think to say to me about me using the frenzy spear has already been said to me by my own disappointed mother. But I wanted to use the frenzy spear anyways, and I figured, well, what if I used one? And you're probably thinking, you're still inflicting status procs on ghost hits. You're still getting them ghost hits that'll make people stand in place and take free damage. Which is mostly true in controlled situations where people don't have a teammate to bail them out of trouble upon the frenzy going off. And for those of you who aren't aware, those of my fans who are not so Elden Ring or Souls inclined, every time you get a hit on somebody but they dodge it and you still see a little splatter of effects, they still get the status of the weapon building up, whether it be poison, whether it be bleed, or in this case, frenzy. And so you can still build up the meter, and when that meter gets full, they take the bad stuff. In the case of frenzy, they stand in place, and you can get a hit on them where they cannot dodge because they are stuck in an animation. And don't you worry, we will talk more about how disappointing I am as a human being, and how my own mother can't bear to look at me for using Vike's War Spear, the frenzy spear of all terrible weapons. But first, let's talk about the build for a minute. It's a dexterity build with a healthy amount of vigor and just enough faith to get the Vike's War Spear off the ground. Meta level 125, started as a vagabond, the usual, but if you buff yourself with the physical ask, where I have the plus 10 dexterity, and then I buff myself with Flame Grant Me Strength, which enhances physical as well as fire damage. Did you see that AR? I know AR isn't everything, but 846 AR on a single spear is pretty darn good. And you're getting solid damage in, even if you don't happen to proc the frenzy effect. But the frenzy effect is kind of the ultimate finisher. If you get somebody in their last little smidge of health, maybe they're at 25% or something like that, and they get that frenzy and you get the R2 off at point blank, it will, well, if it doesn't finish them off, it'll get them mighty darn close. And that's kind of where the build shines. I often find myself playing with our European friends across the pond, just because of the time of day I play at, and having a status effect is very nice when dealing with those latent players. And that's just our connection to each other. That's not to say their internet is bad or my internet is bad. But when you have frenzy, you can kind of account for that. And look at that. Do you see that? I hit in front of him, and it still broke his guard, and I was able to get the critical hit off. And I think the reason why that happened is because of the little bit of latency we had. On his screen, my attack connected, but it didn't connect on my screen. But it's on his screen that it matters when it comes to receiving damage. And so it broke his guard anyways. Kind of funny, but I was able to capitalize on it nonetheless. But let's jump into the main topic, and probably the reason why you're here with me today. It's how very disappointing Frenzy is, along with various stigmas that exist in the game. It's kind of a topic I've been thinking about recently, dwelling on, trying to understand a little better. And you can't make everybody happy, so don't. It's sad. You should be a peaceable person, you know, agreeable when you can be, and kind and respectful, but ultimately you can't make everybody happy, because for most cases they don't want to be happy, and people have differing tastes. Some people see the Vike's War Spear and they go, oh, you've committed the unpardonable sin, you are unforgivable. Even though I could be using two of them, even though I could be using the incantations as well, the frenzy incantation spells that apply the same stats effect for those of you not in the know. And you could do all sorts of dirty things. You could run an arcane faith build, and you could sleep people with the halberd grease, or the halberd covered in sleep grease rather, and then you could hit them with the barrage of frenzied flames, the spell that keeps casting as long as you have mana and stamina, or what have you. There's lots of dirtier things you could do, but we're not here to necessarily talk about the very dirty things. We're here to talk about the Vike's War Spear and other strong setups that make people very uncomfortable. Some of them are as simple as twin swords. Some of them are twin spears. Some of them are twin lances. There's these interesting perceptions that exist about certain weapons, and people get mighty salty when you use them. And it's kind of funny to me because not all of them are as strong as people think. They could, of course, thrash people who are relatively inexperienced at the game. Like twin swords. If people trade in your face, and you got your timing down, you could do your spacing, the damage output of twin straight swords is phenomenal. Look at this honest, single Naginata. That's one of the things I wanted to bring up as well. I guess this is more an honesty video than a than a frenzy video. But look, I used a single Naginata and it worked very well. It's not the ideal weapon in my case. I'm not a big fan of spears in general. The heavy lances are growing on me because their moveset feels pretty good. But I want to get better at using single spears because they are more usable than they've ever been. Do you see that guy get knocked off the cliff? Oh man, I'm loving these clips. They make me smile. But yeah, a lot of people hate the cross Naginata because when you have two of them, the moveset's rather bland, but it's very good. It does big damage. If you have Endure on it, you can make phenomenal trades. This poor guy gets grabbed by the PvE and gets stabbed and dishonored right in front of me. The rest of the clip doesn't matter. I get fogwalled, so we're moving on now. And so I wanted to use a single Naginata. I wanted to use a single Vikes War Spear. I wanted to use these weapons that usually when paired, people get those icky or uncomfortable feeling, or maybe they just feel angry, like they've been cheated in some way. So let's take a moment and look at it from their perspective. Well, if somebody is using twin swords, twin Naginatas, twin lances, or perhaps a Vikes War Spear, maybe two Vikes War Spears, maybe they're using those Frenzy Flame incantations at ideal moments, either using Endure in your face, or maybe they're using Sleep to put you to sleep so that you take the full brunt of that frenzied spell that just keeps firing. What is the natural thing that's going to happen? Well, a lot of people are going to feel discouraged, perhaps. They're going to feel like the other person used an incredibly strong setup and it wasn't a skill-based fight. They might feel that the lethality is far too high and that they barely got a chance to recover, that the fight was over far too quickly. And these are understandable feelings to have. If the lethality is terribly high, there's not a whole lot you can do. Look at my stolen R2. Oh, feels bad. The weapon clips through him, but apparently that's not where the active hit frames are. Oh well, it's fine. But back on point. What is to be done for these people who are using dirty tactics as perceived by the individual? Because I think some people see different things as dirty. Some people see Moonveil as dirty. Some people think Moonveil's fine. It's when there's 3 of them in a gang squad or something like that. Some people hate Dragon Breath. Is Dragon Breath a problem? Well, if you have Endure on hand or the environment to hide behind, Dragon Breath isn't even really a problem. And I can already tell as I'm exploring these thoughts and ideas that this video is already taking on the cadence of my Invaders and Karma video, where I list a ton of problems and I may not have all the solutions, but I may have a few. A lot of the issue is with perception, it feels like. There are things people believe should not be used, ought not be used. And these are the strong setups that perform very well. Or maybe they're the setups that don't have the easiest solution in mind when you're thinking of how to deal with them. And doesn't mean these things should never be used. Doesn't mean these things ought to be ridiculed. I don't know. There are some things that feel a little more dirty, such as Sleep Halberd, or like the Frenzy on the Spear. Though I think the Sleep Halberd is way more of a problem because you can actually get the sleep effect to scale with your stats, while the Vikes is kind of set. And maybe the problem with Vikes comes when there's 2 of them, and of course the status is building up twice as fast. But as you may have noticed across these various invasions, it takes a good amount of hits. It takes 4 or 5 hits of status to get them to stay in place. And of course, if they have PAL, then they get out of it. If I'm out of stamina, they might get out of it. So for these people who believe some setups are so strong that they can't be used, are they right to feel this way? Are they justified? Well, you are allowed to feel that way. Nobody's trying to stop you from feeling that way or even having an opinion. But should that opinion dictate to others what they should, need, and ought to use in their build in a video game? That's the question I would like to pose. For me, I'm okay with these strong setups existing, and I'm okay with people using these strong setups. It's a challenge to overcome. Now, I don't want all points converging on what some might consider meta. I would like to see people use more of the stuff that has been put in the game. I would like to see a variety of stuff. Personally, I like seeing the wacky, the strange, the weird, and I know not all of it feels viable. And of course, more things become viable the more skilled you are at the game, and not everybody has the time or the effort required to, I don't want to say get good, but to practice the fundamentals and become better. Some people, it's their casual RPG experience, they want to play it with their pals on a weekend, and they have a day job to get back to. Those aren't the people I'm necessarily speaking to. Those people are allowed to use what they want, because they may not be overly proficient even if they use the good stuff. I'm talking mostly to the people who are above the casuals, and I mean above not as in you're superior, but above in terms of time investment. You're here to stay, you understand the terminology, you want the best experience possible, is my hope. That's me steel manning the other position of, you shouldn't use these dirty setups. You shouldn't use twin vikes, war spears, you shouldn't use sleep, you shouldn't use twin swords or anything that does substantially higher DPS. So now that we've looked at their position and understood what it's about, what can they do about it? Well, they can't really dictate what other people use. They can try, they can shame them, they can be rude to them if they ever interact. They can send them a hate mail. But what can really genuinely be done to improve the experience of the game overall? Well, there are a couple things that can be done for those of us who have more time invested in the series. For one, you can play at a lower level bracket. If you really don't like the high lethality, I would recommend playing at sub-level 125. Personally, I wouldn't go below level 60, but I suppose as a true hard minimum, I would say probably don't go below 40, but for myself, 60. The lethality is drained substantially when you play at these lower levels. Even the strongest of damage setups feel significantly weaker. Even take Giant's Flame Take the massive fireball that at meta levels can easily one-shot people who don't have a substantial vigor pool. At those lower levels, it doesn't one-shot. It gets close in some situations, but it doesn't one-shot. It helps with the lethality of everything. Keep in mind, this is through the lens of PvP. Of course, in PvE, being a lower level is a little nightmarish. In short, playing at a lower level is one solution. Is there any other solution? Well, I think trying to plan ahead, being prepared, and learning what you can use against certain setups. Like Dragon's Breath, for instance. You can have Endure ready to go. Endure can really minimize the damage of Dragon's Breath. It can help you either get forward and knock the Dragon Breather out of the air, or maybe find cover, hopefully. There are things that can be done. No setup is invincible. It's not the Chainsaw exploit, which is literally breaking the movesets of the game to do incredible damage at incredible range with incredible speed. It's not that sort of cheating. It's all things that were put in the game, and though there are strong setups, there are things you can do about it when it comes to status buildup. If you can watch your opponent, you can use things to mitigate that. You can equip talismans that give you more status bar. You can use the consumable items that give you more status bar as well. There are shields you can put in your offhand that increase how long that status bar is so that it takes longer to do those things. You can have boluses on hand. You can macro space, I think, is a joke in the community. I don't know who started it, but the idea is using big spacing, as in running away, fleeing, finding better openings, not getting in people's faces. There are some setups that are really minimized by having some distance. Straight swords, paired straight swords, while strong, they're short. You can use that to your advantage. You could use a longer weapon and look for whiff punishes. What if they're using twin spears? Well, twin spears are a little rough. What do you do against twin spears? Sometimes it might take fighting fire with fire. Maybe have your own pair of twin spears. I don't know the answer for twin spears necessarily. It feels like you could use something like Quick Step or Bloodhound Step to circle around those people and strafe. Maybe you could use a hyper armor weapon and try to outspace them, you know. Get in them big hits that can't be interrupted, and, well, whiff punish with something that's harder to interrupt, so maybe if they hit you with a single spear, it doesn't stop you. There are things that can be done. Though I may not have all the answers, those are the two solutions I would propose for whenever something disgruntles you. Whether it be twin swords, twin spears, twin lances, status effects, spells that are really strong, there's usually something you can do. You're not as powerless as people commenting on the internet may let on. Now, as the most important caveat I could offer for my entire rant and ramble today, I am not saying that nothing should ever be balanced or tweaked. We've seen FromSoft do this before, where they have balance patches specifically for the PvP and not for the PvE. My whole point in making this video is saying, either play in a new bracket or learn to overcome. These are challenges to be faced, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye now.